Hey everyone, if we haven't met in person, my name is Tiffany Holden and I'm thrilled to overview this concept with you. Thank you so much for signing up on the contributor list on MailChimp. And as I promised, I'm not going to be spamming everybody, but before the holidays kicked in, I wanted to send out kind of an overview of the concept of Storyboard. That's just the working title, it doesn't have to stay that way. Um, kind of share where my thoughts are at on it and what I see as next steps for it. This project is still very much in I consider it the developing vision stage. It's beyond idea, but there is no reality in it yet. So I wanted to preface that and go and say that I'm not promising that I'm going to make this happen or will push it forward. I'm reaching out to people, seeing what the possibilities are, learning from a lot of people right now, and getting a lot of feedback and insight into this sort of project. And it is certainly a desire to make this happen at some point in the future. So without further ado, again, my name is Tiffany. If we haven't met, thank you so much for taking the time to check this out. So Storyboard the concept is a one-day conference celebrating the intersection of our shared faith and the arts that we use to express that faith or to respond to it, or just the ways that we share how we are made in the image of God and His creativity and His creatorship by being creators ourselves. So the name Storyboard came from the idea of storyboards as a planning document. They're changing, they're developing. The storyboards that I have at work are really rough. Often they're on sticky notes or spreadsheets. They're not the grand story, but they show pieces of the larger story. This conference was inspired by attending the Hutchmoot Homebound virtual conference in 2021. That's hosted by the Rabbit Room every year. If you have not heard of the Rabbit Room, you might have heard of Andrew Peterson. So that's worth a dive down the rabbit hole, if you will, to learn more about that incredible conference and organization. That conference happens every year in October in Nashville, the Nashville area. And I've not had the privilege yet to be there in person, but attending it online last year was one of the most enriching practical spiritual experiences of my life. And the event planner in me started wondering what would it look like to bring just a taste of that into our community here in the Pacific Northwest. This is not intended to be a copy. It's not intended to be let's take all their ideas and try to do it. No, it's meant to be its own event, but it is very much inspired by the spirit of Hutchmoot. And so the incredible folks over there deserve a lot of credit for the inspiration. So then here's a storyboard. Here's how I see different arts, different crafts, different ways of expressing ourselves can tell pieces of God's overarching story. Some of us are songwriters. Some of us find a lot of joy and meaning in hospitality or in design. This isn't meant to be exhaustive, but it's meant to spark conversation on what types of crafts or arts might be applicable for a conference like this. So here's the vision: a one-day conference for Christian creatives where we dig into the faith that connects us and share our creativity with others. And I'm located in Bellingham, Washington. I see a lot of potential for hosting this event in Bellingham. I also see a lot of potential for hosting it in Linden, which is a little bit known for its bevy of churches and church facilities and being a very church-friendly community. It also has a really lovely front street. It feels like a historic town in some pockets. So that's another possible location too, depending on logistics. Here are some of the core elements that I think are necessary for this type of project. And we start in the sanctuary and set a biblical foundation for our creativity. You know, none of what we do really has meaning without the creator that gives our lives meaning. And so both the welcome session and the keynote to me belong in the sanctuary with everybody all together and focus on a theological, spiritual foundation for why it is that we do what we do. For breakouts, I could see having 3 or 4 classrooms, obviously depending on the space availability, and having workshops, demos, classes, and speaker sessions on various aspects of faith and creative work. And the next slide will show more of what I mean by that. To me, hospitality is very important. We seek community in our Christian walk. And so part of that is the idea of welcoming strangers. And so sharing meals together and encouraging people to sit with strangers, and our welcome team being very proactive on the hospitality side of things is an important component to this vision. Speaking of community, I love the thought of doing a community mixer in the later afternoon part of the day where people can explore and express some of what they've been learning and process what they've been hearing throughout the day. We'll look at what that looks like in a minute. And then celebration. We as humans, we sometimes need a wrap it all up type session or space to express more of the emotion or the feeling of a day. And so because the conference would be primarily around story, song, and art, having a closing concert is kind of what I think of it, where we showcase individuals and their stories, their songs, and their art in a pretty tight-knit, fast-moving, hour-long creative worship scenario is kind of the vision for the end of the day there. So here's more what that might look like. These are all fictional people. These are all fictional titles of possible sessions. And I have not planned a conference this size before, so my timelines are based on what I've seen done elsewhere, what I think through based on my experience with wedding planning. Obviously, all of this is completely up in the air. But I envision having 3 or 4 different spaces that might have breakout sessions happening at the same time and allow people to pick different options, kind of a first come, first serve. Pop into what is the most interesting to you, or spend time in the foyer or in an empty space and journal or interact with other people who are present. We see that we begin with registration, obviously, and then into that welcoming worship session where we're centering our hearts on what we're there for that day, and have a short devotional that sets our hearts. And then first breakout sessions on different topics. And what I like here or the vision for speakers is that it isn't just, hi, here's what I do and here's how it's creative, and I'm also a believer. I want to see really tight, focused explorations of some of these concepts, the intersection of different facets of our lives. For example, in the studio at 10:30, this fictional person named Angie, she might be a visual artist of some sort, but she's not there necessarily to show her visual art. She's telling a story of a time of growth and change, and maybe that was the time her art flourished the most. And so as a believer, she then is questioning, am I a better artist when I'm depressed? But is my depression glorifying to God? Like kind of digging into those real nitty-gritty experiences that artists might face in their work and the expression that they are gifted with. Feel free to pause this and look at it more deeply. I'm going to move on. Logistics. An event like this obviously does not just happen. Here is a very sample timeline. This came out of my head, and thank you to several people who've already given me feedback on this. Maybe being a conference that might be more appropriate for a March-April timeline. Of course, if it avoids being around Easter and around spring breaks, those are the things that we do have to watch out for in the springtime. I'm not available to commit to anything for 2023 as far as actually producing this event. So I would be looking at 2024 and spending the time leading up till then doing things like this, connecting with folks and seeing what we can make happen. So here's just some initial thoughts for those of you who I know have more conference planning experience than me. I want your input. I want your feedback on what's reasonable and what's normal. Even though I'm the one talking here and I'm the one sending out these emails, I see this as being a collaborative vision development session, and I need to know what I don't know, and I need the wisdom of people who've been there when I haven't. Same thing here. So here's 5 different areas that I see having needs or see needing to make this type of event happen. Currently, we've got folks who are already interested in being contributors and volunteers of various stripes. And then, of course, attending, there's some interest there as well. And the first big element that we would need is a venue church. The venue church is a really core element of making this happen because it's the security team, it's the AV team, it's the functionality of how many classrooms might be involved, how many tickets could be sold. All of those pieces hinge around knowing a venue church. So if you're one of the folks here who is in Whatcom County, that is a need and one of the first things that we would be collectively looking for. I have a couple of places in mind. I have not reached out to them specifically just because of not wanting to make promises or commitments too early on in this process, but just so you know where my headspace is at there. And then it comes down to the people. Like I've said before, I'm a coordinator, I'm a planner, I love doing events, but my experience has been primarily in smaller corporate style business events and in weddings. I don't have large conference planning experience, and I know some of the people watching this do, which makes me over the moon about this. And so I see my role as being a coordinator of coordinators and a coordinator of leaders, not the prima donna leader, manager, organizer of all things. I am game to have the responsibility of that, but I don't want the control. And I need people around me who are experts and who can call people out graciously and say, no, this makes sense. This makes more sense. Let's work this out. Let's hash this out because we all share a common vision here. And I see that people have different giftings in these 5 areas. There's obviously more areas, there's sub areas, there's a lot that goes into this. These are some of the core pieces that I outlined. My strengths lie primarily in the promotion side of this type of event, also in the content management, but I could see other people having a lot more gifting there. I can help with the coordination of it, but I'm not as gifted in the content decisions per se, or vetting speakers, or deciding what might be the right blend of having people from the arts world and from the music world and from the writing world. And so I would love to have a person or multiple people, for example, who are the content chairs, who handle all of that with my support and coordination, but they owned that department, if you will. I don't see this as being a hierarchy. I see this as being a team situation where I can be the communication coordinator among leaders, but that different leaders say, hey, I want to run this, I want to own this, and let's do a lot of communicating to make it happen. That's just my philosophy on this type of thing, and also is obviously open to development and to your feedback. My strengths can also be in this logistics space, kind of the oversight of how all of the big pieces come together. But for volunteer management, that is not my gifting. That is not my gifting whatsoever. I can provide volunteer packets and lengthy emails all day long, but I'm not a great recruiter or rah coach day of type person. I'm very direct and to the point, and what needs to happen needs to happen. And so somebody who is more gifted in people management, delegation, and developing others is probably a better fit for running volunteer teams. So that's just me spitballing on some of those different pieces as examples. So if you'd like to chat one-on-one about being a major player in this conference, if it does come to pass, I would love to chat with you directly in person, one-on-one. Feel free to respond to this email and we can set up either an in-person coffee if you're in my area, or a Zoom meeting and just chat about your ideas or things that might have come up that you've thought of as you've seen this, or your feedback going, hey, look, no, something's way off here. I've done this before and it doesn't work. All of that I am interested in. I want to hear it. I probably will not be reaching out again before the new year. So this is just kind of my initial brain dump to all of you. And I thank you very much for spending the time listening to it, watching it, and getting a sense of what Storyboard 2024 could be. Take care.